Well, greetings everybody and welcome back. It's been a long year. It's been a tough year, and for some of us it was even a tougher winter. Anybody who follows this channel has been well aware that I haven't put anything out in quite a while. In fact, well over 6 months. And I've got a lot coming, and I've got a lot I've been doing. Be patient, there's a lot of neat stuff coming. It's just for a while I had to put absolutely everything on the back burner. In late December of last year, my dad's health, which had been declining for quite a while, had taken a turn for the worst. And I needed to spend as much time as I could with him and my mom, helping them out as best I could. So everything kind of had to be put on the back burner for quite a while. And unfortunately, the cancer that he had been battling for quite a while came back, and he entered hospice care in early March, and that came to its final conclusion in about mid-March, and my dad crossed the bar. Another thing I wanted to do is take the time to thank everybody for their kindness and their prayers and their condolences and thoughts, reaching out. If you follow my Facebook page or the Instagram page for the Salvation Navy, on either one, I posted something about my dad's passing forward, and everyone has just been extraordinarily kind and generous with their condolences and prayers and thoughts, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I've actually been doing quite a bit, and got a lot of neat things to show you coming up here. But I've just been slow on the take, trying to get things caught up with my business, and quite frankly, I just needed a break, and I didn't need to keep stressing myself out about trying to get everything done that didn't need to be done right then and there. So I am in the process of getting a lot coming back. Frankly, a lot of these boat projects have been really great therapy for me. I've been recording quite a bit of stuff to show you what I've been doing. I think you're really going to have a good time watching some of these projects come to life, including another episode that I'm working on just on this Fenwick Williams catboat that I'm going to be restoring. Found out a lot of great information about that. I can't wait to share that with you. Seems like every month I find out something new, so kind of one of the reasons I've been holding off doing an episode on it is I keep finding new things on about it. But we're going to pull the trigger and get that episode out pretty soon. And also, you can see in the background there, I think, the Herreshoff Eagle's coming along. Yes, I do have one coat of paint on it, so we'll be following up with videos on that. I've also got a 1950s home-built Lightning, wooden Lightning, that I'm going to be doing some work on to show you how to do some moving into some woodwork, and going to be using some things like stabilizing and penetrating epoxy to cure the wood and make it a lot stronger. Also, I'm helping my nephew work on his thistle, his 1960s thistle, which has had a complete gel coat breakdown, and we're going to work on putting a new surface on that and getting that ready for his racing season. So there's a lot coming up. I've got a lot of stuff to show you. I appreciate everybody's patience. So that no ado may be continually furthered, let's get back to some of the projects here with the Herreshoff Eagle. I've taken off all the wood and bright work, and I've got some sanding and some new finish work to do on it. Let's get right back into that and show you what's going on. Now, in previous episodes, I showed you how I got the woodwork off. First taking a chisel to the bungs, and then using a bit and brace to get the stainless steel screws out wherever I could. And when I didn't have room for the bit and brace, like for the scroll work on the bow and the stern, I just used a regular old screwdriver and toughed it out. The little Herreshoff Eagle figurehead mounted on this piece of teak needed to come off too. I wanted to make sure that figurehead was as protected as possible. Now, unfortunately, the screws that held that in place were long stripped. I'm not sure if they were brass or some kind of soft bronze, but there was absolutely no way of getting them out. They just stripped out immediately. And the only way I could think of at that point was to just drill out the heads on the screws, then with just putty knives and small crowbars, just very, very gently try and pry that piece of wood off of there. Unless you're willing and able to carve a new figurehead, these things are impossible to come by. So I wanted to take the extra time and attention to detail to try and get it off there as gently as possible. Finally, that's going in storage for safekeeping. The main portion of the bowsprit itself still had some pieces of hardware in it. All of them, unfortunately, were iron, which means they rusted and were very difficult to get out. And I still found the easiest way to get some of the other stuff that was on there off, like some old silicone or some adhesive, was just with a scraper. Starting to use a sander at this point would have just gummed up the sandpaper with all of this stuff, so using a scraper and putty knife seemed to work just fine. After that, the random orbital sander came out. Start off with just some 80 grit just to get the worst of it off. Some of this wood was pretty badly weathered and the grain was pretty raised. Now as for the decorative scroll work, I had some issues with that. I thought about using a Dremel tool with a little sander on it to try and get into those grooves, but I've had too many problems with that Dremel getting away from me and making little divots and other marks in the wood that I really didn't want, so I'm going to try another approach. I'm first going to sand it over with some 80 grit with the random orbital sander and work my way down to around 120. And then for the detail work, I found a little detail Dremel sander that seemed to do a decent job. It's a very light vibrating sander, so it got into these tighter areas without doing too much damage to the surrounding wood. Took a little extra effort and time, but I think it was worth it. Now, many videos ago, I talked about using Seakin's Seatol Marine Natural Teak. It's a product I've really come to like, and it's got a lot going for it. It's very, very easy to apply, taking only 2 or 3 coats. It's not too heavily pigmented, so it allows the natural color and grain of the wood to come out, and it looks great. But I have found one problem with it that I'd like to find a way to overcome. It's just not very durable. Inevitably on a boat, the woodwork's going to get bumped into or scraped into by something, and it really doesn't seem to take much to create a problem in the finish. Keeping in mind that Seatol is not strictly real varnish. It's a varnish substitute that's made to go on a lot easier with a lot less effort than varnish is. So there's a trade-off, but I would still like to try and find something a little tougher. I mentioned this to the folks at Total Boat, and they recommended I try this, their Total Boat Marine Wood Finish. This is their competing product to Seatol, and they said it's able to stand up to a little tougher use. So I'm going to give it a try. For the first coat, I do thin it down just a little bit to get a little better penetration down into the grain of the wood. Applying the first coat went on just perfect. But there is one repair job I have to get to before I can apply it to the rub rails. Being that this boat was made in the economic troubles of the 1970s, the grade of teak on this boat was definitely not top shelf, which is understandable. It's still nice, but there are a lot of flaws in it, and in this case I had a huge knot right in the middle of a large piece of the rub rail. I think it was probably broken before I even took the rub rail off, but either way it came apart in my hands as I removed the whole thing after all the screws had been taken out. So how do you repair this? I'm going to use polyurethane based glue, but how do you glue such a fragile area like that and still maintain the shape of the rub rail? Well, there was a small splinter inside that I needed to glue back, and that was easy enough. I just used some clamps as well as a small piece of sheet PVC, which won't stick to the cured glue. I can't think of any way to mechanically pull this together with a vise as it is, so I had to add a few perpendicular to the rub rail to give other vices something to pull it in back together with. This is what I came up with, and it seemed to work fine. After the glue cured, I took all the vices off, it maintained its shape, and being as gentle with it as possible, I sanded it down. So far, it's holding together just fine. Now as for the bowsprit itself, I tried using a sander on it, but the grain was so highly raised on it, it was going to take me forever. I didn't really want to do this, but I very, very lightly ran it through my planer just to take the worst of it off. Now there is an interesting taper at the end of this thing, so while I couldn't run it through the planer, I was able to use the belt sander to get that last little bit down. After that, I went ahead and sanded the whole thing again with some 80, then down to 120. And then I used a roundover bit in my router to clean up the radius that was on the top side of the bowsprit. Give it a light sanding, and then apply an initial thinned coat of the Total Boat Marine Wood Finish. So far, I'm really happy with it. It offers great UV protection, lets the wood grain come through, very easy to apply, And after some time passes, I'll let you know how it all stands up to regular use. I've already got another episode I'm working up. That'll cover an initial coat of Kirby's Great Paint, along with showing you the procedure for applying the soft sand non-skid. I'm also working on that special episode of the Fenwick Williams catboat I'm going to restore. Also helping my nephew with the gel coat failure on his 1960s Thistle and how we're going to address that. Also be aware that you can get a discount with Total Boat products with the discount code listed below. It's a different code than the one was before, so make sure you check it out and have the updated code. And thanks again always to Total Boat for their sponsorship of this program. I'll be back with another episode as soon as I can. Until then, thanks for coming back and sticking with me. Keep calm and work on your boat. And thanks, Dad.